I was actually astonished. I think people who wanted to remain were so complacent that they were shocked out of their shoes. And it really was because there hadn't been such a big campaign for Remain, because there was almost a certainty that that would be the case. So that was an electric shock, okay? I suppose instinctively I wanted to remain part of Europe. I was born during the Second World War and have grown up to a great age during a period of relative peace, some Cold War, some wars abroad, but nothing that threatened our doorstep, which was the first time for a very long time in Europe. So my first thought was, politically, here are these countries that have been at each other's throats since 1066 and before, and here's a jolly good chance to stop all that, and it has. And what really further straightened my opinion, I hate to personalise this, was that Boris Johnson took a whole weekend to make up his mind, and suddenly he said, "Oh, David Cameron, I'm afraid I can't support you." And the next thing we know, he's on a bus telling us that leaving Europe means that we would be able to put an extra £365 million a day, or maybe a week, into the National Health Service. And one thought, whoa, he did that calculation in a weekend, did he? I mean, it was such balderdash. Well, they've won, they've achieved their goal. It's slightly ironic that it's a Remain Prime Minister who is primarily going to do the negotiations, but like an iceberg, which said he got a seventh of its appearance above water, it's really those 6/7, which is the Foreign Office and various Treasury and other officials negotiating with each other, who will decide the nature of the exit. I'd say to them this next time around, possibly don't be so impulsive, and also really easy slogans like saying you're going to save 365 million a week for the National Health Service, which is patently untrue, are not very fair to the public at large. No, not at all. I think it's a positive minus, because if we look at the last decade or so, one of the big things that's troubled us all in Europe is people leaving North Africa and making their way to us for the promised land. And while sympathy must be exercised, we also need to coordinate efforts how best to look over after our fellow men. And to do this isolated as an island on its own, as opposed to 28 countries putting their minds together, is pretty stupid, I think. The whole business of immigration has always been something that initially promoted the health of this country. My goodness, scratch anybody going down the street, and I doubt if they're pure Anglo-Saxon, and our most brilliant politicians and scientists are certainly come from various different backgrounds, so that's been a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, there's been this social security immigration, where people have come to live off the state, and that's not on, and that needs to be stopped in all of the 28 countries, I think. I think it would be silly to say that there isn't the possibility. I mean, we've already seen through a referendum that Scotland didn't want to leave the United Kingdom. In the case of Wales, I think there's less anxiety. I think Wales is pretty happy to rub along. And in Northern Ireland, you have a very strong Catholic community which would very much like to leave the United Kingdom and be part of a united Ireland. And I think with the Republic of Ireland being part of the common market, that is the first danger rather than Scotland. Yes, indeed I do. I think one has become aware that England isn't London, and out there are a lot of people who feel that they're not being looked after, that they're being ignored, and that the country isn't for them. And it's very easy to sit, as I do, in the centre of London and live a sheltered life without facing the realities of towns where there's not only unemployment, but an awful lot of shops and things have shut down and changes needed to be made. And just because one doesn't see them doesn't mean they're not there.